Okay, members, I've declared the meeting officially open, and can I welcome members to first meeting back after recess. In the room with me today I have the Vice Chair Kelly Armstrong, we have Andy Allen and we have Sinead Innes, and on Starleaf at present we have Fran McCann, Jonathan Buckley and Mark Durkin, and Robin Newton has said that he will join us at some stage during the meeting. First item on it is declaration of interest. Any declaration of interest for today's meeting? Andy?
Yeah, private sector landlord in respect to one of the SLs.
That's great, thank you. No other declarations of interest? Then I'll move on to agenda item number 1, and there is no apologies. So members, I'm going to go straight now to the Minister's briefing. So can I ask then that we bring the Minister's sound on and welcome her to the meeting. Minister, can you hear us? Well, I know you can hear us, we can't just hear you right now. Minister, are you there? Oh, well, we can see you. Oh, yes. We can see you.
You can see? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Minister. You're very welcome to the meeting if you want, and we apologise for keeping you waiting. We do know that we're on a restricted time here, so I'll pass straight over to you.
So thanks very much, and apologies for the restricted time today. I'm just dealing with emerging issues, as you do, and it was a bit of crack, that's all I'm saying. I had a cup of tea and listened to you, so I'll say nothing other than that. And what I will say is that there are lots and lots of issues that you probably want to discuss. So I'll come back, should it be next week or the week after, just to try and clear up the first meeting we've had from the recess, and it's specifically on the extension of the coronavirus regulations in relation to the private tenancies. So is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Okay, so listen, I'm sure you're all aware that I decided to extend the notice to quit until March next year. Simply because, like, apart from other legislators here, if they haven't done it already, will be considering to do it. It's just that if I had extended it for 3 months, it was taking us into the mouth of Christmas. And to be honest with you, I mean, that wouldn't have been ideal. So in terms of the impact, it has been very successful in achieving its objectives, and indeed the figures from the Housing Executive show that in comparison to the same period last year. There's approximately half the people who are presenting homeless due to a loss of rented accommodation, so I mean that's largely down to the fact that there's been no widespread spate of evictions. This Act is emergency legislation, and I am acutely aware that it only applies for a limited period of time. But I have the power to extend it, and it can be exercised as many times as required up until a limit of 2 years. So the limit at this stage is up until March 2021. As part of this extension, the communities, my department has consulted with a range of stakeholders, including LANI and Housing Rights and Orla, an organisation representing letting agents. Communities have contacted all landlords and received responses from around 300, which is quite big, and nearly 2/3 of landlords who responded stated that none of their tenants had fallen victim to any disputes, and that none of their tenants had fallen into arrears in the period of April to June 2020. Some landlords have been adversely affected during this period, with tenants refusing to pay rent. But at this stage, we need to find out with certainty, is it a difference between won't pay and can't pay, and we also are acutely aware that some tenants, a very, very small minority, have been engaged in what could be described as antisocial behaviour. So Housing Rights have voiced their support for the extension of the emergency period, because it is essential that we give protection to renters in the private rented sector and indeed to landlords. Housing Rights further reported that although 18% of people live in the private rented sector, around 1/3 of the contacts one third of that contacted their helpline. And at the onset of COVID-19, this proportion increased to almost half. So, like 73% of COVID-19 related cases came from private sector to Housing Rights. It is also very clear, and you will know this from your own constituency work, that the health crisis is still very much with us, and that's likely to continue through the autumn and winter, albeit thankfully not at the same period. But the difficulty is that the furlough scheme will finish at the end of October, and I think the full impact of economic disruption has yet to be realised. So it's reasonable to anticipate the tenants will continue the protections. It's also, if I could ask it to be noted, that if I don't utilise this power beyond the 30th of September and the date passes, the power to return to longer notices of quit won't exist. So we would need primary legislation to reintroduce this protection. So that's why I did what I did. And I also want you to note, as I mentioned elsewhere, like England, Scotland, and I think Wales will be considering this as well. And it is important to give certainty to tenants and landlords. So that's why we opted for a longer extension to March 2021. I've also asked officials to carry out a review in January to consider whether there's a need to continue this extension beyond March. And, it is clear that the provisions in the Act contains power to shorten the extended period should the right circumstances prevail. So listen, I could go through a whole raft of stuff. I'll just leave it at that. I'm happy to take questions. David Polly and Eilish O'Neill should be there, but if not, we'll just try and get it sorted out. Is that fair enough, Chair?
That's brilliant, Minister. Look, thank you for that. And I don't know if David and Eilish are on there, but if they are on there, can our comm system put them on speaker as well? Minister, thank you. I want to just ask a couple of very brief questions because I realise we've got a lot to get through. Can I just then just ask about the antisocial behaviour side of this? Just is there what the evidence is? I know you talked slightly about it, of any evidence that has come back to say where landlords have felt their hands have been tied. I know any conversations I've had with any landlords and also with people living in private rented sector, this has worked out fairly well. Landlords are fairly happy with it, and so are the tenants, and those that can pay are paying, which is good. I think they're few and far between those horror stories that you hear. I think they're more of the exception to the rule. And then can I also ask just on a separate issue to do with housing then, about the housing adaptations. I've spoken to you in the past about this, where we have people who are waiting on housing adaptations that are actually stopping, which will stop those people being admitted to hospital or to care homes, which is vitally important as we continue with the COVID issue. And also then I want to ask about your thoughts. I know you mentioned it in the chamber yesterday about the allocation and the point system, just when your thoughts are when we're likely to see any changes just in that system, because it's just not working at all. And I leave my questions at that. Just thank you, Minister.
Okay, so first of all, I don't want to be dealing in speculation, so I want to get hard evidence of how many cases there are. But I already know, even from talking in my own constituency, even talking to other constituency representatives, you're talking about single figures rather than scores. So that's a good thing. And to be honest, landlords in those circumstances were very patient and actually outlined the responsibility. So I'm just hoping it was a few isolated incidences. In relation to adaptations, you're 100% right. And we need to ensure that the housing executive and housing associations bring forward adaptations, because particularly for people who need it. Particularly now as a result of COVID and the health emergency that we're in, very few people want to go into hospital for necessary treatment, but their mobility is greatly impacted. And when they come home, their mobility and recovery is impacted because the adaptations aren't there. So we're certainly taking a look at that. I'll be having a meeting my officials will be talking to the housing executive about this. So I'll come back to you on that. In relation to the allocations, the consultation was done not long ago. We're going to need to look at it. I'm not suggesting another consultation. Everybody said the current system doesn't work. Most people, if not all parties, when they got up and spoke in the chamber around the debate that Fran McCann brought forward on intimidation points, everyone was saying the same thing. You know, there are genuine cases of people who are intimidated, unfortunately. However, there are people who are chancing their arm. We need to ensure that people who are claiming to be intimidated, that it's verified by the PSNI and that you can stand over it. So I want to give you assurance that I would say by the end of this month, I'm going to be looking at the consultation, looking at the report, taking some advice from housing exec and others, and also taking some legal advice. But I'd be certainly bringing something forward very, very soon, because it's untenable. But what I said yesterday, I'll say today, and I'll say tomorrow and the week after. We need to get the increase of supply to a better position than what it's at, because we will never ever properly tackle or reduce the demand unless we look at the supply end. The allocation point is one thing, but it's almost like tinkering around the edges. We need to get the fundamentals here.
Okay, thanks for that, Minister. I'm going to go around the members here. If they can just let me know if they want to come in, and please be as quickly and as succinct as possible with your questions. Andy, you wanted in?
Yep, thanks, Minister, for your overview thus far, and I'll try to be as quick as I can. Firstly, can I ask for an update on the court ruling in respect of terminal illness with PIP? Secondly, and I thank your officials for the written answer in recent days around the disability strategy. Can you provide an update in respect to that? I know they had indicated it would be drafted imminently. An update on the expert advisory panel and when we're likely to see a draft of the strategy. Also, if possible, can you provide an update on the sub-regional stadia programme? Obviously, clubs have been waiting for a very, very long time for this funding stream, and many of them require it now. So, be keen to see that being rolled out as quickly and as proactively as we can get it. Declare an interest in respect of a charity trustee. Can we also have an update in respect of the Charities Commission? And last but not least, the Kickstart programme. I know you'd indicated in the chamber yesterday you're hoping to launch that in November. Can you provide some more detail in respect to that? I appreciate it's probably being drafted now. Was there a decision taken to not participate within the UK scheme? Why did we not participate within the UK scheme? What are the Barnett consequences, if any, that we are going to get in respect to the Kickstart scheme? And how are we going to make sure that we have an efficient and proactive scheme here in Northern Ireland? I'll leave it there. Thanks, Minister.
So on the, I don't think I'm going to get a lot of today, to be honest. I was here to talk about the extent of these statutory routes. However, it's very important issues that you've raised. So what I'll do is I'll talk about special rules around the benefits, and I'll try and give you some assurance on the charities. I'll come back to you on the sub-regional, and certainly try and talk to you about, I'll come back to you on the charities and sub-regional and talk to you about Kickstart. Okay. So first of all, the special rules, particularly around terminal long-term illness, you'll know that there was a couple of court cases, so I'm still getting some legal advice on, you know, that legal process, believe it or not, still is ongoing. There's certain things that the department have to do in response to that, but I am currently looking at what we can do in addition to changing the provisions around, and certainly looking at what we can do to support people who are terminally ill and need this payment, need these benefits. So I can't really go into any more other than that, because I'm still trying to bottom out the different bits of legal advice. And I am going to be meeting with the likes of Marie Curie and others, other stakeholders later this month, and hopefully, you know, that will be a positive engagement. But as soon as I get this bottomed out, the first place I'm going to is a committee, after informing executive colleagues with what the next steps are. And I'm not being evasive. You know it's not my style, but there's no point in me speculating what may or may not happen until I get to the bottom of what I can and can't do. So I'll leave it at that. In relation to Kickstart, it's not that I didn't want the Kickstart programme directly transferred over because it happened in England. It's just what happened in England isn't good enough for here. And it's as simple as that. I want to try and get a programme that learnt on lessons from the past. So like for 18 to 24-year-olds, we need to include youngsters who've got disabilities, youngsters who've got autism, youngsters who are deaf or hard of hearing. And by and large, that didn't happen because you're not only working with them, you're working with the supporting organisations and indeed the potential employers. I also want to ensure that we're not just getting something in order to meet an artificial deadline, we're getting something in that has potential to endure. This programme should not be even anywhere near anything related to sanctions or anything else. I want all that stripped out of it. Needs to be an empowering and supportive track into work. I also want to use the experience that we've had in the mouth of the emergency and COVID, that they've got the community and voluntary sector and groups there and sporting organisations who have the ability to work along the department, try and give people the experience and support they need to go out into the workforce. And that's basically where I am at Kickstart. I will have a programme by November. At the minute, I have met with officials a couple of times, certainly as recently as yesterday or the day before yesterday, I think. And I will definitely make sure once we get a draft and see the scheme that we'll go to the committee with it as well. But I'm not just keeping the English model at arm's length because of any ideology. I just don't think it's good. It's not good enough for kids here. It's not good enough for my kids. It's not good enough for anybody else's kids. In relation to charities, I've recently met with the AG. I've also met with our officials in relation to try and getting better regulations and to make sure that lessons that were learned from those court cases are never to be repeated again. As you know, that some of that legal, in fact, all that legal advice is privileged. But what I will say this is everybody's acutely aware, I'm acutely aware that there was and is reputational damage done, and we need to fix that. And we need to make sure that there's no adverse impact on charitable organisations who, by the way, this is pure volunteerism at its best, aren't penalised by something that someone else should do or should have done. So I think, Chair, to be fair, I will come back and I've taken a note. I'm sure my officials are taking notes of the issues that were raised that we need to come back on.
Okay, Andy.
Yep, thanks, Chair.
Okay,
Thanks,
Minister, thank you. We know that we've maybe gone straying a wee bit over and above on some of the questions, but we know that you will come back to us. I have Kelly, Mark, Johnny and Fra still to go, so just remind members, and you as well, Minister, just to keep answers and questions as short as. Okay, Kelly?
I'll go back to the housing issue, Carol, if you don't mind. I was going to ask you about the review. I know you talked earlier about the point system, but the review of the housing executive itself, obviously, it's in a slightly different place to the social housing providers, and they don't currently build houses. But have you any plans for that review of the housing executive, and when you might bring something forward about that?
Well, first I will keep it brief because this was mentioned yesterday. So in the NDNA, you're looking at the removal of corporation tax and their historic debt, and I think that's something we need to get sorted out. I don't want to get that sorted out in housing executive on, as that nothing's happened. So there needs to be a fundamental review around revitalising the housing executive in terms of building, modern methods of construction, procurement and all the rest. It isn't a case that they just get additional money and they can go off and do what they want. That's not happening. I mean, the housing executive, in my opinion, should have been an advocate for people on the housing waiting list, and they have been. They could do better. Yeah, they can. And we need to set the parameters, just like the rest of us. We all could do better, but we need to set the parameters of performance, of targets. And if those targets aren't met, there needs to be penalties around that, in my opinion. So I'm certainly looking at options, but the pressure at the moment is the removal of the corporation tax and indeed the historic debt.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask lots of questions, but Andy beat me to them all. All I would say is thank you very much yesterday for the Kickstart comment where you committed to people with disabilities being brought into that, because I know that there's a lot of fear out there, especially from those organisations through the European Social Fund, the ESF. But also then just, Minister, you can get back to us at a different time. The arts funding, there's a lot of groups out there desperate, so just make a plea on their behalf if something could be brought forward for them soon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Mark, we'll go to you next. Mark,
Hello.
Mark, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I couldn't speak earlier when you were doing declarations of interest, but I will have to declare one later on as well for an item later on in the agenda. Thank you, Carol, for coming in. I had the proposed benefit of a private meeting with the Minister a month or so ago around issues housing and homelessness. And at that stage, Carol, I did raise with you, it was around the private tenancies bill. And he touched on it there about the issues that some landlords that had like a very, very small minority, but there had been a guy on to me, and he's phoned my office today actually as it happens, but I haven't spoken to him today. But he was on about legally challenging the bill itself, and now we're seeking to extend it, and I'm supportive of that extension, but it was just to ensure and be sure that all the I's were dotted and T's crossed in that respect. I don't know, have you heard any more from that, from officials? I know David, I think, was at that meeting too, and he was vaguely aware of this individual and his concerns, but I think it's important to make sure that the bill that we're extending is watertight if the one that we previously approved and voted for wasn't.
Yeah, okay, well, David,
Hi.
David, do you want to answer?
Can you hear me?
Yes, David.
I haven't heard anything further. I haven't heard anything further about that. We have done what we need to do to extend this legislation. You'll be aware that any legislation, this is primary legislation, any legislation was made is signed off in terms of human rights and things like that by the Attorney General and also the Advocate General. Anyway, we've done what we have to do, and before we decided to do this extension, we have assured the Minister, and I'm happy to assure you, and I'm sure it says it in the SL1 that you have in front of you, that we are happy that this is a robust and competent regulation that we're laying.
Okay.
Minister. Oh, sorry, it's Eilish O'Neill here. And I think I had contact with a gentleman who was keen to see how he could pursue an objection to the legislation through a judicial review. And as you know, that facility is always there for anyone to challenge any of our policies or our legislation. And but we're confident that if there is such a challenge, that we can robustly defend it.
Yeah, and then I suppose we have to be mindful. I suppose we have to be mindful of what would be prompting this challenge or what that individual's concerns are. In terms of, I suppose, the disadvantage that he sees it puts him and other landlords at if there are circumstances where, and the Minister has acknowledged that there are some situations where tenants are abusing their tenancy. There's antisocial behaviour, there's the withholding of rents. It's just to be sure, through working with Lanny and other landlord associations, that they know that they have some sort of protection or some sort of recourse in a situation like that.
They do, and the legislation does not stop a landlord from giving notice to quit to a tenant. And the courts have now reopened, so if there was such a notice to quit that had been given and the tenant wasn't moving, the landlord is now able to go through court. Now there's no guarantee when the case will be heard, but our legislation does not stop any landlord from giving notice to quit for a tenant where there's a legitimate reason to do so. It just delays the process.
Good. No, that's fine. That had been my understanding, but it was just to make sure that was done.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, members, I still have Johnny, Fran, Sinead, and we've 10 minutes, so please be as succinct as you can, Johnny. Johnny, can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed. Thanks. I'll be brief as well. Welcome what the Minister has said in terms of potentially coming again to meet with the committee to discuss some of these issues further, because my issues were very much the same as Andy's. I would like a further update, more in-depth review Charity Commission, rectifying legacy decisions and how this impacts the backlog. I know the committee hope to meet with them, but I think maybe the Minister could potentially go into a bit more depth with the information she has at a later date, probably. Also, in relation to the sub-regional strategy, yes, in terms of the stadia funding, I don't know if the Minister is saying, but I've been very encouraged by Mid and East Anthem's approach with the sort of joint working group that they now have amongst some of their sub-regional stadiums to try and deliver a more effective funding package. So I would maybe be keen to see if the Minister could try to encourage a more collective approach across Northern Ireland to indeed follow the same sort of model. And finally, because I know it's brief, but we're receiving a presentation after you, Minister, in relation to some of your department officials on liquor licensing bill. But Minister, while we broadly welcome the bill, which will include a category for license of a new license for producers, no details have been published. But I would like you to commit, Minister, to potentially meeting with the Campaign for Real Ale and the Society of Independent Brewers on a small round table to discuss how these decisions impact their industry, because in a post-COVID environment we know that these local brewers do so much for, in terms of Northern Ireland PLC in relation to tourism aspects and exports. And I think it would be important for you, Minister, to meet with these individuals to fully comprehend the challenges that their industry face and how we have the potential through this bill to unlock the further potential in terms of tourism and exports.
So, Chair, I don't know if it's this, maybe Sinead Ennis can confirm this, but she's asking for meetings with brewers, and maybe it's the same people, Johnny. Chair, I don't know.
Probably is. I would say it is the same people. I think they've gone around all of the parties as well. So they have.
So I've no issue with that. And I've no issue about coming back. I mean, like what we do is we just gather a list, the officials will take note, and we'll work out what we can do, because we're not going to get all this covered in one meeting. And if it means me coming in every other week, I have absolutely no issue with it whatsoever. One thing I will say, Johnny, is I don't even think we're post-COVID. I know we're coming out of the emergency, but certainly, and the fact that we're doing so well or we're doing a lot better is because of the work of particularly groups and that on the ground, including sporting organisations. But certainly I'll come back about the sub-regional, about charities, about special rules, and I know there's a couple, and I will undertake to do a meeting with the producers and the breweries.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. I have Fra down as next on my list, but I don't see him here. Are you still with us, Fra? Don't know if he is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fra, are you there?
He
Go
is.
ahead, Fra. I still have Sinead and Robin to come in, and we've got like 6 minutes, so go ahead, Fra.
He's on mute.
You're on mute, Fra. Can you hear it? Fra, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you now. Go ahead.
And I know thank the Minister for all the answers, and some of the questions I was going to ask have been covered. But one, I know that in a previous ministry she was a champion for the deaf community, and there's been some difficulties has arisen in terms of the wearing of masks. And I don't know whether the Minister, and I take it she has taken on board the difficulties that there are there, and I noticed in our priorities that the deaf community is mentioned, but have they been in contact with her office and relate to some of the difficulties posed by wearing masks for deaf people?
Yes, so in short, I met with the NI Coalition on Deafness today. Now, as Carál mentioned, it was in relation to the deaf funding, but others within the coalition raised the issue around the awareness-based coverings and indeed access to work and face-to-face assessments and communication. There's an acceptance that we're living in unprecedented times in terms of health, and we need to protect each other, but there may be certain asks from the deaf and hard of hearing community around special masks to ensure that they aren't prevented from communicating, and that includes hearing, reading people's lips as well as interpreters too. So we're going to look at bringing forward our Sign Language Act and all the rest, which to be frank, the inequalities within the deaf and hard of hearing community are just getting wider, and they've been going on too long.
Okay.
And Chair, just one final thing. It's just for mentioning, maybe the Minister will take it up. I think it's in relation to local government. We're fast approaching the time when councils will be sitting down and looking at striking a rate of preparations for it. Some of the words or some of the information come back is quite frightening. Has that been taken on board? And is there would there be another round of financing for local government as we move along?
Well, first of all, Fra, yes, we are looking at other rounds of funding, and I'll put local government down to come back on because, I mean, some of the issues or some of the speculation coming out of some of the council areas is scurry biscuits, to say the least. But anyway, I put that down the list to come back on.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Okay, thank you, Fra. I've now got Sinead and then Robin. Sinead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I suppose first of all, it's good to see that there is consensus probably among members of the committee around different priorities that they'd like to see. You know, we're getting a briefing on liquor licensing next, so that's good, and obviously sub-regional as well. But I suppose, Carol, it's in terms of the recent revitalisation scheme that you announced. So the first round of it's been rolled out currently by the councils, but I know the second tranche of funding to come out. Mike, it's probably not relating just to yourself, Carol, to be fair, but I know Minister Poots had contributed some money to that funding scheme as well. And I'm just wondering, have you had any conversations with him or his department about potentially adding or topping up his contribution to that second tranche of funding, specifically so that smaller settlements that missed out this time could maybe avail of it?
Yeah, so to be fair, I think there's a counter approach. I think we're going to review how well the revitalisation scheme went. We're going to look at it again, potentially putting more money in. And we need to look at all settlements. I'm responsible for 5,000 above, and Evan's responsible for that and below, 5,000 below. And to be honest, we need to make sure that particularly small towns and villages, as well as towns and cities, are given every opportunity to be supported, particularly coming through this economic and health crisis, because it has had a big impact on their business. And that support, like even just one retailer said, you know, even having the ability to buy street furniture and awnings and a barrier to protect them has meant to say that they don't have to make staff redundant. So both of us are acutely aware of the impact of that bit of funding, and we're going to absolutely do the review and then look at to see what else we can do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then very quickly, Robin.
Yes, very quickly, Minister, and thank you for attending the meeting. Minister, this is described as a ministerial briefing on departmental priorities. Could you just tell us, and you indicated yourself that we are not out of the pandemic as yet, but do you have a plan for a post-COVID route out of the situation?
Well, I do. So the plan is that the NDNA has a lot of work there and a lot of targets to be met. So, I mean, I've already started doing the preliminary work around that. Fortunately, we have had it's not unfortunately, we've had a strategy come from the economy and economic recovery one, but to be frank, it's a draft. It's not there yet. And we've also discussed at the executive that we need to look at that as well as the social recovery strategy. And to be honest, it's about getting the doors opened of pubs and clubs and theatres and venues. It's about getting the Barnacourt consequential 33 million out. It's also about giving people confidence to participate in all the things they did, albeit in a different way. So there are, and it's about, like, even within the DSC family, getting libraries, museums, heritage centres all open, and that's slowly happening. But as you will also understand, Robin, that we're guided by scientific and medical evidence, and unfortunately we've had a couple of dates for certain things to open, and we couldn't proceed with those because the R rate just wasn't where it was supposed to be to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I accept what you say, Minister. I think I speak for myself, but I'm sure other members of the committee would actually like to see a plan against which we can consider the plan, and indeed to question you on your next appearance at the committee on the progress of that plan.
Okay, well, what they're shown. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll bring forward a list of issues that were raised at this committee. I'll also bring forward a list of the things that we need to do under NDNA, and I'll also bring forward, if possible, a schedule of what we need to do next, because some of these issues are time-bound in terms of legislation, and also possibly get into the next mandate. If I can get that covered in 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 meetings, I think we'll be doing well.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Minister, thank you. I think we've got our timing pretty spot on there. Thank you very much.
And I appreciate letting me come in for a certain period of time, which is all known me well enough. I'm not dodging it, I'm dealing with issues, but I'll certainly be back. If not next week, I'll definitely be back the week after that, and we'll pencil on a couple of dates to get through the issues that were raised today. What I try and do is try and give you some headline briefings on where things are at in preparation, because I don't want to appear in front of a committee without any paperwork. So we'll try and get that done, and we'll try and get the dates scheduled in for the next period of time.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Minister, and also thank you to David and Eilish as well for their presence today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, members, we are going to move back to our agenda again. And just before I move on to item number 2, can I officially welcome Dr. Janice Thompson as our new clerk for the committee, and also to wish Dr. Kevin Palin all the very best in his new role as well. So just to put that on the record. Okay, members, I want to then move on to agenda item number 2, which is Chairperson's business. I just want to let you know that the Deputy Chair and myself have been asked to take part in an evaluation for Cliff Edge Coalition. And most of you will know about the Cliff Edge Coalition, so the meeting is to be arranged soon, and then we will bring a note of the meeting back to the committee for information. Are members okay with that? Okay, yep. Next thing I want to let you know is that I received a letter which was signed by over 35 groups from the arts sector for Northern Ireland, and that has been put in the table papers today. You've probably received the same letter that would have came through. I sent it straight through to the committee when I got it yesterday. It just highlights the needs for urgent and significant financial intervention in the sector, and requests that the committee work with the Minister and wider executive to help secure a full the financial package, or part of that financial package, that 33 million. So members content to note that also? Mm-hmm. Yep, okay. And then just finally, I want to just inform you that on the 21st of August, I received an email from a member of the deaf community, as all of you will have done as well, I'm very much sure, which is at page 2-3 of your meeting pack, and it highlighted the ongoing unequal treatment of the deaf community in Northern Ireland compared to our other counterparts in other neighbouring jurisdictions. So it's just to let you know that I sent that also through. That is in our correspondence pack, where we've asked that we send this on to the Minister for a full a briefing, or certainly a written briefing on that. So members content to note that also. Mm-hmm. Yep, okay. Then I'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is the draft minutes. You'll find the draft minutes.
Chair,
sorry, go ahead, Robin.
Okay. In terms of those entertainment, the guys who wrote to you, are you intending to reply to them?
On which one was that? Oh, the arts?
The arts, yeah.
Yes, the committee will reply. The committee will reply to them, and it'll be from the committee.
Yeah, I think that's important, Chair.
Okay. All right, well, moving on then to agenda item number 3, which is draft minutes. Members, you'll find this at page 6 of your meeting pack from the 8th of July. Can I ask, are members content with the minutes of the 8th of July 2020 as drafted?
Agreed.
All agreed? Good, thank you. Move on then to agenda item number 4, which is matters arising. Members, again, you've been provided at page 14 with a departmental letter in relation to applications to the Charity Commission. Can I ask member any comments, or are they content to note that at present? Any comments or notes? No, we're okay. Fry, your hand is up, but I don't know whether you want to speak or not. No, it's down again. That's okay. All right, so nothing further on that. Then I will move on then to agenda item number 6, which is a departmental briefing on the liquor licensing bill timeline. Members, you've been provided with papers starting at page 17 of your packs. The department has been working over the summer to produce the draft liquor licensing bill and explanatory and financial memorandum. We've got people in person today. Can I welcome then Liam Quinn and Martina Campbell from the Social Policy Unit to provide an update on the progress of that bill and an update on the consultation also of the gambling law. So, Liam and Martina, you are both very welcome. Is it Liam, is it yourself that you're going to kick off?
I'll kick off, yes,
Go
Chair.
ahead.
And thanks for the invitation and good to see everybody back here. On the liquor licensing, I'll give a bit of background as to where we are and what progress we've made since the previous briefing in the middle of June. And then Martina will talk a wee bit about gambling and where we'll go with that over the coming weeks and months. So on liquor licensing, first of all, we briefed the committee, I think it was 25th of June, on the detail of the consultation and what Minister was going to do following that. We took the papers then to the Executive and got approval to have a bill drafted through the Office of Legislative Counsel. And that work has been ongoing since the 10th of July when we got that approval. Now, we're at the stage now where we are very close to having our bill finalised. From our point of view, as you know, involved with the drafting, we will then have to send it to the Departmental Solicitor's Office and also the Attorney General's Office to allow them to scrutinise the bill and make sure that everything's in order. So the intention would be that, assuming everything goes according to plan and that there's no drafting errors or issues that need further consideration, we would hope to get something to the Executive towards the end of this month, early October, which would then be the opportunity for us to come here with the draft bill, provide all the members with a full detailed briefing on the detail of the proposals and how they would actually work in practice. That would lead then to an introduction to the Assembly, usually would be about 4 or 5 days after the briefing of the committee. So that's where we are. I mean, there's been a lot of work going on. During the summer, staff had leave as well, and obviously that meant that we weren't making as rapid progress as we would have liked to. We probably aren't where we would want to be, given that the COVID emergency led to staff being redeployed and Minister having a lot of other priorities to deal with. But the Minister is keen to try and get this bill through before next Easter, if at all possible. And that would allow the hospitality industry to benefit from the proposed changes to Easter opening hours.
Okay.
So that's where we are. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with the full draft bill and be able to answer all the detailed questions, hopefully, at that point. And then a couple of weeks after that, we'll be into committee stage.
Okay, that's grand. Do you want me to ask a couple of questions? We'll ask questions on that and then move on to the gambling. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
I mean, you've answered pretty much of anything I wanted to ask you, other than one thing. And today we have an SL1 to do with the Down Royal Racecourse has come through. Just wanting to know sort of the rationale behind that decision being taken in advance of the liquor licensing bill, if you can.
Well, the law, the primary legislation to allow the designation of an outdoor stadium was passed in 2016. It was a private member's bill brought forward by Judith Cochrane. The first couple of outdoor stadia were Windsor Park, the National Football Stadium, and Kingspan, Ravenhill. Down Royal have approached the Department for designation as an outdoor stadium. They followed the process set out in the liquor licensing order. The Minister was minded to approve that. They've ticked all the correct boxes and it now goes before the Assembly as part of the SL1 process. It isn't really connected to the draft bill. The next stage, assuming approval from the Assembly, will be for them to take their designation letter to the court and apply for a liquor licence to allow them to operate as an outdoor stadium.
No, I remember that bill. I sat on that committee then when we had the stadia bill,
Yes,
or the licensing bill for that.
I worked closely with Judith at that time.
Yeah, remember that well. Just one more point. I know members will ask you on various other things. I just want to ask you to do with the COVID-19 and any representation from the hospitality sector. Has anything changed that they may want to see extra in the bill or removed from the bill with their experience of how the impact of COVID-19 at all, or if you had any conversations about that?
Well, I mean, the proposals that the Minister are bringing forward changes quite considerably the proposals that were debated in 2016 in some respects. I mean, first of all, there's the Easter opening, which is more extensive than was previously proposed. Also in relation to the late nights for pubs and hotels, rather than special occasions of only 12 a year, we're now looking at pubs potentially being open 104 late nights in a year. So that's what ministers brought forward as our proposals on this occasion, and both of those were in response to lobbying from the hospitality industry.
And it certainly will be. I mean, it will be welcome news for them sooner rather than later, because it will help the hospitality industry a great deal.
Yep.
No, look, that's grand. I'm going to open it up to members to ask some more specific questions. Kelly, you first come in.
Thank you very much. I know that we're going to come back to us at a later stage, but I just wanted to clarify a few things before it goes much further. Excuse me, the drinking up time, the extension to the drinking up time. To be honest, I don't have a difficulty with it, but what I do have a difficulty with is the consideration that there would be for those people who live around those venues, if there are any residential properties. Is there anything that cuts across with planning on that as to limiting time? You know,
I'm not sure about planning being involved. I mean, what will drinking up time is, you know, the bar will close at, for example, 11 o'clock at night, and you won't be able to serve any more drink. But people will be allowed to leave the premises more slowly over the following hour rather than the current half an hour. But I mean, if people locally want to object to noise from a premises, they can raise that with the relevant authorities.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because I have had issues in the past with planning, where, say for instance, a hotel that does have a late licence, and then the drinking up time, if that was to be extended by a further period of time, we're going into the hours of sleep of residents, which, to be honest, makes it extremely uncomfortable for residents. So I just wondered, was there anything in that?
I mean, I'll look into that for you, and we'll come back to you on any plan issues around the drinking up time.
Yeah, the other one was about young people in sporting premises. The consideration at the minute is to permit young people to remain in the bar area of a sporting club until 11 p.m. between the 1st of June and the 31st of August to attend an awards ceremony, or on one occasion in a calendar year. So that would be outside of that period of time. I'm just wondering why the summer, because quite a lot of sporting organisations don't have awards ceremonies during the summer, because that's when they're playing their sports. It's normally in the autumn time.
The awards ceremony would be outside of that period, so it could be one. Yeah, that'd be one. Yeah.
So, for instance, if you had a girls' team and a boys' team who happen to have awards on separate nights, that's it. One of them has to not happen.
The current proposal is for one. Yeah, it would have a joint ceremony.
Why? I just don't understand.
That was the proposal that was brought forward previously, and the minister has run with that now.
Okay. Is there an option to fix that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, anything in the draft bill can be subject to amendment as we go through the process.
But that's what I mean. It'd have to wait to the bill. It can't be done now.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, I mean, we're quite far on to start taking amendments at this stage, and I would actually.
It was brought up before by the committee. I brought it up in the committee before because I am concerned that, in particular, where you have sports where there's female and male events.
Yeah.
The female ones usually are the ones that pay the price on that one. So I have brought it up before. It's just I still see it's still all the same.
Yeah.
The other one was about, and you'll hear this from others. It's about the local producers. I did bring it up before, and I say it's still all the same at the moment. That while they're allowed to sell their produce from their premises, there's no clarification on the drinking of their product on premises. I don't believe that they compete with pubs because they'll only be selling their own produce. And also, what's the clarification on drinking up time? If they were allowed to sell their own produce for sampling, even at the moment that has been considered, what's their drinking up time? Are they going to be the same as every other premises?
The normal opening hours would apply, the normal permitted hours. There's no proposal at the minute to allow producers to sell drink for consumption on the premises other than a sample.
But the sample's not confirmed as to what that means?
Well, it will be confirmed in the bill.
Okay, because the last time when I asked it, it was like a small drink, but it didn't say.
But that was before we worked on the bill.
Yeah.
So what we've been doing since that last briefing in June is develop a detailed bill which will set out in law what all these proposals are. Right.
But it's still not to allow them to
Operate as
sell
pubs.
open drinks.
No.
Okay, I'm a bit disappointed with that because, to be honest, that's the point of a local producer having a venue. It's not just to sell the bottles of
Well,
whatever.
there's the opportunity for them, of course, to purchase a licence to operate as a bar.
But I'm not talking about them operating as a bar. It's just to sell their own produce.
Well, I mean, the hospitality industry will
I know
have
the
serious concerns
hospitality
with that.
industry,
You know,
but
and
we're in
there's
a new world now. We do
yeah.
have local producers that weren't there in the past. I just think
Yeah.
that there's an awful lot of influence has been in place by some in the hospitality industry when we do have our own artisan producers,
Yeah.
and we are treating them differently to those other hospitality sectors.
I'm not sure we're treating them differently. I mean, we're going quite far in allowing them to sell drink for consumption off the premises.
Just the same as UK, the rest of UK.
Yeah, but Northern Ireland liquor licensing legislation is very different from what you get in England, Scotland or Wales. Very different.
Should we not be trying to have an even playing field there?
Well, that's an entirely different debate then. We haven't had that debate yet. But yes, I mean, as I said earlier, there's an opportunity in all of this to put down amendments through the committee stage and also then at consideration and further consideration stage. So, I mean, this is a draft bill, very much a draft bill, and members will want to influence what comes out at the end.
And I suppose that's something for us to remember here, in this, certainly in this briefing, that we haven't got the bill in front of us yet, and I know because I've sat through many bills, that is a time when committee can change and can influence. So just to remind members of that, that will happen as we scrutinise the bill, clause by clause. So just to remind members of that. Kelly, you finished there?
Yes,
Yep,
thank you.
okay. I have Mark and then I have Johnny. Mark, you're first. Can't hear you. Oh, there we go. Mark,
there we go.
there you are.
Thank you for the presentation. I did declare an interest here. My family own a licensed premises. Just a few issues, and they have been touched on already. But yourself, Chair, you asked about the COVID situation and had there been any change in approach or an ask from the hospitality sector as a consequence of what we're seeing at the moment. Now, I'd made the point a few months ago when we previously or last discussed this bill, the need to ensure that there's flexibility in it built into the legislation so that we are able to, or the industry is able to respond should we get back to where we are or where we are currently in the future, because I do know now that a lot of publicans this will hit the Assembly maybe early October, and there'll be a bit of a fanfare about it in the news, and they'll be like, "Buck, they're talking about us being able to open to 3 in the morning, but we can't open at all." So I think that everything's changed in that industry, and we're going to see quite a number of pubs go out of business. Would be my fear. So I fear that maybe this legislation might be coming a wee bit late. Nonetheless, it's important we get it done and we get it through as quickly as possible so that those still standing are able to derive the benefits of it as early as possible. The point that Kelly had been making there, I think, around the planning element, if you have later licences, what will the implications be for planning? Now, it mightn't be so much planning as environmental health, who are statutory consultee on planning and who will have expressed concerns around practices or certain industries going on around or within residential areas. A concern that I have or that I thought of when Kelly was speaking there was again thinking of the here and now, the COVID situation, where people aren't allowed to go for a drink, solely a drink, unless they're sitting outside. There could be even more acute issues there for residents living nearby, given the noise that will be generated from those outside areas will be a lot more audible than where the people sitting inside. I think that's, again, something that needs a bit of consideration. The issue around the local producers, now they have been pretty active indeed, and I have a few in my area who are great, have sampled their stuff and it's not bad at all. I have certainly sympathy for them, and I think we should be supporting these industries and helping them grow. However, I do also see it from the other perspective in terms of those who have paid for licences and might see local producers or brewers who haven't getting an unfair advantage by being able to sell alcohol on their premises. So it's a case of trying to get a happy medium. I think that we can convince the vintners, the existing vintners, that we're not going to allow a piss up in a brewery. Not that we could organise one if we tried, but it is just for sampling their own produce. And I would, and it's maybe out with the legislation, but encourage where possible partnerships between the local producers and local bars, because the industry's taken a while kicking as it is, and you don't want to be sort of rubbing salt into the wounds by giving others a leg up, that they perceive would disadvantage them.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mark. On the noise issue, any bar applying for a licence under the current legislation must consult the local council and the police, and both have power to object in court. So if there is noise or disorder associated with a particular licensed premises, that facility is there for the council and the police to respond to complaints from members of the public whenever their licence are being renewed or when it's been applied for. And on the noise issue, the local council are responsible for management of that issue as it goes forward. This legislation is unlikely to be on the statute book until sometime next year. And I would hope that we wouldn't be in the same restrictions as we are now for licensed premises by then. But we have to be guided, and the executive has to be guided by the situation on the ground regarding the COVID-19. So it's not really much we can say about that.
Well, I know there have been a huge number of responses to consultation on this legislation, and I haven't got the papers in front of me. But did council's feedback in that regard, because it could potentially and will undoubtedly make life maybe more difficult and busier for their environmental health officers. But I was thinking now, particularly given the fact that people and bars are going to have to use their outside areas more, if not even exclusively. At times, their licence has been granted. They might not have to go for a renewal, but are there particular restrictions that can be put on the times that outside areas can be populated in this legislation?
Well, it's not in this legislation, Mark, and the consultation was completed before the COVID emergency arrived. But during the scrutiny of the bill, the committee will be seeking evidence from other interested parties, and local government clearly is an interested party. So I would expect the committee to seek their views at that opportunity.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I think one of our witness briefings will be from councils, because I know from a bar in my own area, the issues that local councils had in trying to stop functions happening in that bar that were causing great concern to residents. Councils don't get it easy either. So maybe just we will certainly, I think, I know, I'm sorry to butt in on you, Mark, here, but I know certainly will be something that I would be in favour of. Sorry, Mark, go back to you there.
No, that's fine. I'm happy enough with that, Chair. It's just a few points, and we'll have plenty of time to thrash these out, I'm sure.
Yeah. Look, thanks, Mark. Okay, Johnny, you're in next. Jonathan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can now, Chair. Thanks, and thanks for the briefing. Carál has taken a lot of the points in which I would like to raise, and I thank her for doing so. Actually, there is some concern, and you've mentioned it as well, Chair, that we'll probably, through later witness briefings, the likes of councils about some of the challenges that they're facing with later licences and that extended drink-up time, how that affects local communities, particularly those within urban settings. So I look forward to further engagement on that point. I suppose probably the point in which I would like to probe a wee bit more on is that new category for licence for local producers. I tend to agree with Kelly on this one. The more in which I've looked into this, I do seem to find that there is a completely different offering between what a bar and what a local brewery or an independent brewery provides to the customer. And I think that has to be recognised. Even the inability at present for many of these local products to be even on tap within our pubs, given the fact that they're tied into licence agreements with larger producers, has prevented that industry from flourishing in the way that I believe it potentially could. So I suppose I would just like to ask, in terms of when you expect to publish the new proposals surrounding the new category for producers and what that would look like.
Well, it'll be contained within the draft bill, which, as I mentioned earlier, we expect to have finished by the end of this month into early October, and coming to the committee for a pre-introductory briefing as soon as we can get it fitted in around that time. The draft bill needs to go to the Departmental Solicitor's Office, it needs to go to the Attorney General for their scrutiny, and then we need to liaise with the Speaker to see about timings and how the Assembly timetable looks. So there's quite a bit of liaison and work to do in terms of choreographing this and getting it together. But we would expect to have our bit done fairly well by the end of this month, and that the draft bill will be available then. And we will come along to the committee for a more detailed briefing where you will have the proposals in front of you, and you will be able to ask all the difficult questions about what does this clause mean and why does it say it that way and not another way, and all those issues. And that's prior to even the detailed clause by clause scrutiny, where we go through it and the committee then has the opportunity to put forward their own amendments and views. And we'll take that back to the Minister, come back to the committee either with a yea or nay, and the committee can then put down their own amendments for a vote in the Assembly. So there's plenty of opportunities to scrutinise the bill when it's ready. I mean, the three main things that the Minister's proposals bring forward for local producers is the opportunity for them to run a tour of their premises and provide samples and to sell for consumption off the premises following the tour. It also gives them the opportunity to attend events on licensed premises where they can sell their product for consumption off the premises. So, for example, the BBC Food and Drink Fair that was held at the Waterfront Hall, we know a few years back there was issues there around licensing. The proposals coming forward in the draft bill will address that and allow a local producer to attend that licensed premises and sell their own product for consumption off the premises. They'll also be able to attend local fairs and craft events where they could sell for consumption off the premises, and that would be from an unlicensed premises. So there's quite a lot in the proposals for the local producers, I would suggest, given that they're starting from a low base.
Yeah, and does that include the ability to sell products online?
It would do for consumption of premises, yes, online. Yep.
So under those proposals and those under that remit, does that also include those that are unable or wish not to have, for example, premises tours on premises?
Well, I think, Jonathan, with respect, we're starting to get into detail on a bill that isn't before us yet and that hasn't been finalised. So if we could maybe leave a lot of the detailed questions to the point where we have it ready and finished, because there could be stuff that I tell you now that won't end up in the final draft.
Yeah, I think you're right. I said earlier on, after Kelly spoke earlier, just remind members, whenever we will have our chance when this bill is in front of us to, literally rip it up and redraw it again if we want to. So members, just be mindful of that. This maybe isn't the time to ask some of those in-depth questions.
That's fair enough, Chair, and I suppose probably I appreciate the information that's been forthcoming to date, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so. But in crafting the draft, bill has the officials, and I did mention this with the Minister before you potentially came in. I wasn't sure whether you're in the room or not because I'm not in it, but I've asked her to meet with the Campaign for Real Ale, Society of Independent Brewers, and potentially even a round table of brewers and cider makers. Have you done that to date? And if not, I know the Minister will be. Will you also, as department officials, take it upon yourselves to meet at the earliest point to help, in terms of discuss the plans in more detail with them?
Yeah, no, I've met with quite a number of producers and distilleries. I've visited their premises. I've addressed large gatherings of lots of them down at Loughrea College outside Cookstown. So we have been engaging with them for a number of years, and we're familiar with what they want. In truth, some of them want to operate what they call tap rooms, but not all of them do. Some of them are quite content to run a tour of their distillery, provide a sample afterwards, and offer their products for sale for people to take home with them. So it's not that all of the local producers are speaking with one voice. They're not.
Okay, well, I suppose that's something that we'll probably tease out at the committee stage. Probably, I would imagine, a witness briefing with those Campaign for Real Ale and Society of Independent Brewers would be something, and around other brewers and cider makers would be something that would be useful to us. But just in closing, I think Mark's point is right, that we do want to see a fair and balanced level playing field between those that operate on our high streets and in the established premises at present, but also give the ability for those independent brewers to really come alive in terms of their capabilities here in Northern Ireland, because we all know that there is quite a unique product, and a product that, if facilitated in the right way, could really unleash their export potential and Northern Ireland tourism as well.
Yeah. I think the Minister would totally agree with that there is great potential there, and would welcome these local industries as they develop.
Okay, thanks, Johnny. I'm going to move on then to Fra. Fra, did you want to ask a question? Your hand's gone down again. It was up earlier.
When I asked the question, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Fra. Go ahead.
Oh, it was just a comment, and again, most of the questions have been asked, but I want to thank the two reps from the department have come along. I think Liam's been at the committee many times. He's like a permanent fixture at it, especially in terms of the liquor licensing, and hopefully, and maybe you could say, I know that he's trying to give a timeline on the way out of it, but I think it's crucially important at the present time, especially with many premises and many people who will find their businesses closed, that we get this legislation through. But I do think, in terms of the cider people and the others, I think that it's a huge move forward from the initial debates and arguments that took place 3 or 4 years ago. Obviously, as we go along, I think that the Minister's right, that you can look at what I think one of the things is that if we don't get the thing right and get it in as soon as possible, it could be a double whammy for many premises, especially in trying to tackle the tourism sector.
Yeah, I think Fra's right. There's a big challenge to get this through quickly, but officials are keen to work with the committee and try and move things forward as quickly as we can.
No, appreciate that. Thank you, Fra.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Sinead.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose it's more of a comment as opposed to a question, really. But I know the last time you were here, the issue of how much the licence would cost for the craft breweries, and it's taken on board by what you said, Kelly, and also what Mark said as well, because we know some of the breweries are hamstrung, or some of the pubs are hamstrung by, they're tied into agreements with Diageo and different companies, and then they can't sell the local brewery up the road. So that is something that maybe could be looked at. But the last time when we teased out in terms of the licence, we were talking about, and again, I appreciate that we can't go into detail here, but we were talking about a reduced cost for the licence for the craft brewers, because it is quite substantial at the minute. So I suppose where the conflict is you're offering a reduced cost for the brewers to operate their licence, whereas pubs have to pay, a significantly higher cost for their licences, but you're maybe asking for them both to operate on the same level, and that's probably where the equity comes in. So, I know in my own area in South Down and the brewers I've spoke to, it's a tourism thing for them as well. So, they're not asking to operate a tap room. They're happy enough for tours to come up, which has done. Tour buses have pulled outside some of the craft breweries and they've been turned away. So I think if we can up our offering in terms of that, I'm not saying that's going to satisfy everybody, but I think it's a good place to start from. So I think it's just a wee comment, just to be mindful about, and I know we'll tease that out when we see the draft bill, but we would be hoping that the licence will be significantly reduced. So that's maybe where the tension will come in about selling in the same vein as pubs.
Just to clarify the situation on the cost of a licence, the department doesn't charge anybody for the cost of a licence. What happens with bar and off-licence licences is that there's a limited number, so they have a value, and people have to surrender a licence in order to get another one. So someone who's given up their licence won't give it up for nothing, and that's something the department's not involved in. It's a trade that takes place between people wishing to acquire a licence and someone who's prepared to sell the licence that they already hold. The only fee associated with it legally is the court fee, which is designed to cover the costs of operating the courts. And it's a matter for the Minister or the Department for Justice, but it's in the region of hundreds of pounds. You know, it's not hugely prohibitive. And that would be the same for a public house or an off sales. So it's not something we're involved in. That's a market that has developed because of the fact that there's a limited number of licences.
Can I just then come in on that? And that's concerning in itself, because we know those small brewers could never afford some of those prices for those licences. I mean, I know from way back when I sat in council all those years ago, and it used to come through the council, the change of licences, and there's scary money what they're selling for. There's no way on this earth an independent brewery could afford. Some of them are going for hundreds of thousands of pounds. You know, if you have a big Tesco store that needs a licence and you've got a small brewer, you know which one has the most money there to pay for it. So I think that is something we will need to look at whenever we are looking at the scrutiny of the bill as well, is the amount of licences we have in Northern Ireland, because there's been a moratorium on that for some time as well. So yeah, that's where that difficulty will arise for them. You know, so Sinead, we sorry, you finished there?
Thank you. Yeah.
There's no other members have asked to come in at this stage, and I know, look, thank you very much, Liam. I know this is pretty much the infancy that we're talking about today, and I know we'll go into much more detail when we get that bill in front of us, and we really do look forward to it. So we're going to hand over to Martina now. Good to have you back with us. Haven't seen you in a while here. So good to have you, and go ahead, Martina.
So my comments will be very brief, really just to confirm that the consultation took place on the review of gambling licensing between December and February. We had 382 responses, and there was a slight delay, as Liam had said earlier, in analysing those because staff had been redeployed. But myself and another member were appointed to the team a month ago, so we're all systems go. Minister has cleared the draft consultation report and would like the committee's comments before finally publishing it. So that should be with the committee over the next day or two, the draft report. And we're very happy to come back and brief then on the content of that report later in the month, if that's suitable. And that's kind of where we are.
That's great, Martina. Thank you for that. And again, just remind any member that want to ask a question, let's not go into anything in depth, because we are going to get it within a very short period. I know I, along with other members on this committee, sit on the all-party group that is related to this, and there's been various issues have been brought up within that APG. Just ask if you can give us any idea at all of any of the areas of concern, or would you rather wait until we have it in front of us? I'm not putting you under any pressure. We put Liam under enough pressure there, so we'll not do it with you, Martina.
Well, I mean, there's, I suppose what we're hoping to do is, once Minister agrees the content of a bill, to bring forward greater detail to you, so happy enough to wait until
No, that's
you've
perfectly
got the
fine.
report.
Absolutely, and I mean, I'm happy to wait as well until we see that, and then we will have that debate and that discussion on each of the issues. There's no members have indicated they want to ask you any questions. Martina, you got off all right there, so you did. They all
You've gone
exhausted
light on me
themselves
as a
in name.
newbie.
They did. So no, that's okay. So that's fine. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you both. And no doubt we will see lots of you
Yeah.
over
Well,
the
yes.
coming weeks and months. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, we're going to move on then to agenda item 7, which is the pension scheme bill draft motion to extend. Can I just ask members if they would turn to page 121 of their committee packs, and you'll see the draft motion there to extend the committee stage to the 29th of January. Primarily that is just to give us a little bit of wriggle room. It's not saying that we're going to use all of that time up, but it's just to allow us, because we will have the liquor licensing bill will be coming in front of us, and then we'll start getting the other stuff to do with the gambling will be coming through as well. So just ask members, are they content that we that motion is lodged with the business office?
Yes.
All agreed?
Agreed.
Yep. Okay. Members, we're going to then move on now to a series of SL1s and SRs. So if you'll just bear with us, and we'll get these all read through. And I suppose we probably need the members on Starleaf unmuted as well for this, if they have any comments to make. So aren't I at the right place, everybody? Yes, I am. Agenda item 8, okay, which is the SL1, the Down Royal Racecourse designation as an outdoor stadium for the purposes of liquor licensing legislation. So members, you'll find that at page 123 of your packs. The proposed rule will designate the Down Royal Racecourse as an outdoor stadium of importance to the whole of Northern Ireland. Can I just then ask, are there any comments? Are you content for the department to proceed and make the rule? All content? Yes? Okay, thank you. We'll then move on to agenda item 9, which is SL1 Private Tenancies Coronavirus Modifications Regulations, NI 2020. Again, members, you'll find this at page 126 of your packs. The context of these proposed regulations is that the Private Tenancies Coronavirus Modifications Act, NI 2020, imposed the requirement for landlords to provide tenants with a 12-week notice to quit a dwelling house led under private tenancy to protect tenants from eviction during the present emergency period, which ends on the 30th of September. And as we'd heard earlier from the Minister as well, it's to extend this. Can I ask members, are they content with that, or that the department proceed to make the rule? Or any comments? All good? Yes? All good? Okay. We'll then move on to item number 10, SL1, Social Security Income Related Benefits, Persons of Northern Ireland Family Members, Amendment number 2, Regulations NI 2020. You'll find this at 131, and the context for the proposed rule is that the Department of Work and Pensions is bringing forward a statutory instrument to amend certain income related benefits legislation to comply with commitments given in the New Deal New Approach Agreement. Corresponding amendments to NI legislation are therefore necessary. I can go into a bit more detail if members need me to, but I think they probably will have read it in their packs. So can I ask, are members content with that, or any comment? Members content? Yes? Okay, thank you. I'll move on then to agenda item 11, which is SL1, the Pensions Protection Fund Moratorium and arrangements for companies in financial difficulty, Regulations NI 2020. You'll find this again then at page 136. And members will have noticed that the related SR is also in today's pack at agenda item 15. The SL1 was made available during summer recess and is being considered today along with the statutory rule. Again, members, any comment? Are you content that the department go ahead and proceed with that rule?
Content.
Content, okay. We'll move on then to our statutory rules then. So the next agenda item number 12 is SR 2020-147, the Social Security Electronic Communications Amendment Order, NI 2020. Members will find the rule at page 141 of their meeting pack. Can I ask, have members any objection to that rule being made? No objections. Then I'll put the question that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2020-147, the Social Security Electronic Communications Amendment Order, NI 2020, and subject to the Examiner of Statutory Rules report, has no objections to the rule. Okay, members, we'll move on to agenda item 13, which is SR 2020-148, the Social Fund and Social Security Claims and Payments Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2020. This is at page 148 of your meeting pack. Can I again ask members, have you any objections to this rule?
No.
No objections? Okay, then I'll put the question that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2020-148, the Social Fund and Social Security Claims and Payments Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2020, and subject to the Examiner's Statutory Rules report, has no objection to the rule. We'll then move on then to agenda item 14, which is SR 2020-149, the Social Security Income Related Benefits, Persons of NI Family Members Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2020. Members, you'll find this at page 157 of your packs. Can I then ask again, have members any objections to this rule? No objections? Okay, I'll put the question that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2020-149, the Social Security Income Related Benefits, Persons of Northern Ireland Family Members Amendment Regulations NI 2020, and subject to the Examiner's Statutory Rules report, has no objections to the rules. Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item 15, which is SR 2020-162, Pension Protection Fund Moratorium and Arrangements for Companies in Financial Difficulty Regulations NI 2020. You'll find this at page 171 of your meeting pack. Can I ask again, have members any objections to this rule? No objections? Thank you. Then I'll put the question that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2020-162, Pension Protection Fund Moratorium and Arrangements for Companies in Financial Difficulty Regulations Northern Ireland 2020, and subject to the Examiner's Statutory Rules report, has no objections to the rule. We'll move on then to agenda item 16, again another SR 2020-167, Statutory Sick Pay General Coronavirus Amendment Number 5 Regulations NI 2020. Members will find this at page 180 of their meeting pack. Can I ask members, have they any objections to this rule? No objections?
No.
Thank you. Sorry.
Could I just ask on this? I have no objections to the rule, but this is quite important, and I'm wondering, is it worthwhile for us to write to the Minister to ask her to ensure that the information portal for businesses like NI Business is informed of this, because I think a lot of employers need to know that their employees can claim statutory sick pay on self-isolation and if they've tested positive for COVID and have to stay at home. It's the same actually with the next one as well. Sorry.
Okay, well then I think that's a good idea that we just write to make sure that message is put out far and wide. Yep. Okay, agreed with that. So then no objections to the rule then? No. Okay, so we'll put the question that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2020-167, Statutory Sick Pay General Coronavirus Amendment Number 5 Regulations Northern Ireland 2020, and subject to the Examiner's Statutory Rules report, has no objection to the rule. Okay, we'll move on then to agenda item 17, which is SR 2020-186, the Statutory Sick Pay General Coronavirus Amendment Number 6 Regulations, NI 2020, and this is at 189. And then again, we will ask that that message is put out. Members are agreed with that? No objections to the rule?
No.
No? Yep. Okay, I'll put the question that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2020-186, the Statutory Sick Pay General Coronavirus Amendment Number 6 Regulations NI 2020, and subject to the Examiner's Statutory Rules report, has no objections to the rule. Okay, we finished all that. And we'll move on then to agenda item 18, which is correspondence. Remember, you'll find the correspondence memo at page 197 of your meeting pack. Can I just ask members, are they content with the responses as drafted in that? All members content with that? Yeah. Hold on, Kelly, you wanted to say?
Sorry, I was going to say about the letter that we received from the Secretary of State, Robin Walker. I'm very heartened by that, to hear it, see it actually put in writing that the European structural funds will be replaced by the Shared Prosperity Fund. My concern is what percentage we will get of that in Northern Ireland to enable the protections for those organisations. Would it be possible, as he has mentioned here, that there would be further plans set out in the comprehensive spending review announced by the Chancellor? Would it be an opportunity for us to write to the Chancellor to ask how that is, the Shared Prosperity Fund will be allocated? Is it Barnett Consequentials or another format? Because we're quite on a periphery here, and it's quite important for our vulnerable people and others that are supported that we do get a fair shout at this.
Yep, we can certainly do that. Members agreed? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, members, any other issues on the, or anything they want to raise on the correspondence memo?
Chair,
Sorry, Robin, go ahead.
There is the issue of the letter from the Lisburn councillor.
Yes.
It doesn't indicate whether or not that is part, the flat that's owned by the constituent is part of the high-rise strategy or not.
Okay.
So
Well,
obviously
yeah.
there are likely to be many people in a similar situation as the high-rise strategy rolls out.
Yeah, no, Scott, Councillor Carson had contacted me about this and I'd asked him to put it in writing to the committee because it's something else that I had dealing with a constituent as well, to do with the leases and to do with selling those properties on and mortgages and everything else. It's causing a bit of an issue, so that's why...
Is this part of the high-rise?
Not necessarily. It doesn't have to be even part of the high rise. It's those you know, any flats or apartments in general and the lease on them. So it is. So it doesn't even need to be that. It can be anything to do with that. I think that is the general view I had of it. Andy, go ahead.
It is indeed, Chair, and I've been contacted by a constituent. I don't know if it's the same issue, but it's not in relation to the high rises. It is a particular issue. The Housing Executive do not have the power to extend the lease period when the leasehold runs down. I have spoken to the Minister and the Minister gave me a commitment that she would look into it. So she is aware of the issue, but I think it's good that the Department will look into it because it is a particular issue. Yeah, because it is. I mean, it's happening throughout. I know certainly in my own area in Rathcoole, for example, I know we have multi-stories there, but with any amount of flats as well that aren't multi-stories, and it's issues there. And especially if someone's trying to sell and a mortgage provider looks at it and there's only so many years of the lease left on it, they're highly unlikely to get a mortgage. So it's an issue that I think that we need to have cleared up, and I think that's yours is pretty much the same as mine, Andy. Those my issue pertains to somebody wanting to remortgage. So not necessarily wanting to sell, but as I understand it from conversations I've had with the executive, it's all linked into when the first leasehold was allocated onto the 100 years onto the first leaseholder, and then it runs down. The next person doesn't automatically get 100 years. It's the lesser leasehold, so there's a particular issue there, and there's no power or authority for the Housing Executive to act in that respect. No, so I do think it's a good one for the Department to come back and give us some answers on, because that may have to be looked at and how we can change that in some way in order to help those homeowners and other people that are wanting to buy and get mortgages. So, okay, members, I'm going to go back then and just ask, any other issues under the correspondence? Nothing? No? Okay, good. Then we'll move on to agenda item number 19, which is the Forward Work Programme. I just want to let members know that we will be briefed by the Assembly Research on the Pension Scheme Bill at our meeting on the 16th of September. And also a request was sent to the Department for officials to brief on the second independent review of PIP. So we're hoping that we'll have that also then for next week as well. And then on the back of the planning day last Wednesday, as a next step, Assembly researchers are putting together a briefing paper in connection with housing and cultural issues that were discussed in order for the committee to decide on a way forward on a number of issues. I just want to then ask members, would they like the researchers to join them for a short closed session on their briefing paper, and that is only really for us to finalise a work plan. It's not anything other than that. I don't like closed sessions, and it's not something that I do willy-nilly, you know, so I'm just asking, that's the only thing. It would be just to look for us to do a bit of planning. So members would be happy enough with that if that's okay. All right, okay then I'm going to move on to agenda item number 20, which is any other business. First of all, in the room, any other business in the room anybody needs to bring up? No? Okay, I'll go to Starleaf. Any members on Starleaf? Any other business? No? Okay, good stuff. Then I'll move on to agenda item 20. Sorry, who was that?
Yeah, Johnny, sorry.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Sorry, I couldn't get it off mute. Just in light of all the conversations that we've had in relation to the liquor licensing bill, and I know a lot of the members have been receiving correspondence, is it in order, or could it be provided that the committee actually just write to the organisations just explaining where the current process is, and that they will have their opportunity to come to the committee at some stage, whether it's through witness briefings later. It's just, I know we've all probably been receiving the same information, and it's just maybe to make them more aware.
Okay, look, Johnny, thanks for that. Anything that has come directly to the committee where an organisation has written to the committee has to respond to it. So that's fair enough, and the committee will respond to anyone who has written to say that we will be, whenever we're discussing this in the bill, they may be part of the decision process and may come in to give us a briefing. Anybody who has contacted us independently, that is not a committee matter. That is for up to each of the members to get back to anybody who's emailed them personally. But I mean, for the majority of them have emailed maybe through to the committee, they will get a response anyway. But if members, members can assure, and I'm sure a lot of those interested parties are watching and listening to our committee anyway. And as part of our committee business, it's imperative of us to listen to all of those stakeholders out there and all of those interested parties. So I would imagine we will have, if not all of them, a vast majority of them in front of us anyway to brief us, Johnny. So that's kind of my answer to that. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, just on the other point, I know the Minister had said that she's going to come back to meet with us again.
Yep.
Well, for example, the issues that we've raised just briefly, I know it wasn't ideal, but I suppose that was more of a technology point of view than the Minister not being here. But would it be in order for there to be a sort of a draft detail in terms of the different points that's going to be raised? Because I know there's a lot of issues, not least that Andy and other members have raised, that I suppose it's going to take a bit of time to get through, and if we had a wee bit more of an indication as to what topics to cover at that period and what not to, might help with the information.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point to make, and we know the Minister is more than willing and always has been to come and brief this committee at any stage, and she's as good as her word there, and will get back to us. But I think the next time we have her in, we'll do it like we did the last time, where we'll send through various topics of what we want to discuss. I think we were just eager to get her in our first meeting back, and she wanted to explain probably a bit more about the private tenancy stuff. But we will do that at future meetings. We will give her a brief of the issues that we want to cover. And absolutely, it was kind of our fault here this morning with the technical issues. It certainly wasn't the Minister. She was listening to every word we said, even though that we didn't know anyway. Albeit we didn't say anything bad, of course, about her. We never would. But she's more than happy to come back with us again. So is that okay, Johnny?
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Dead on.
Chair,
Sorry, go ahead, Janice.
On the back of what you said there, as part of the sort of forward work plan, we were pulling out the issues. The team are pulling out the issues that were raised at the planning day, which are a lot of the issues that you wish the Minister to address, and we will be coming to you with a short paper from the team on a list of issues, so that can be added to.
Okay, fair enough. That's grand. All right, members, Robin.
I did ask the Minister, Chair, about her plan to take us out of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And it ties in with the point that Johnny had made, and I think what Andy had been saying earlier, if I caught it right, and I should have apologised for my late arrival, Chair. But I do think it is important that we would try to understand, not that we ask the Minister to respond to some questions, but indeed that the Minister publishes a paper, a plan, a strategic plan, in order that she is showing us her route out of, as I believe other ministers are doing, out of COVID-D, and how we recover from this situation. And it's against that strategic plan of the Minister that in many ways we should be looking forward and holding the Minister to account, rather than reacting to a situation as it is week by week, month by month. It seems to me that we're missing something if we're not seeing that bigger picture from the department.
No, I think you're right as well in what you're saying. I think, really since this committee formed, we've been in the middle of COVID, and it has been reactionary, and that's the way it has, and it had to be. And I think that we got through it, and certainly handled everything pretty well. But and I know we're nowhere near out of COVID. We're nowhere near past that. but it would be good to see a more detailed plan of the various, and I'm sure the Minister's frustrated as well. I'm sure she's as frustrated as we are that she hasn't been able to progress some of the issues she wanted to progress as well. But no, that will certainly be asked for. It was a point that you had brought up earlier, so it will be asked for. Okay, anybody else want to say anything?
Sure.
No? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Fra.
Sure, it's just on the back of what Robin has said. I think that the Minister has shown a willingness to work actively with the committee on any of the issues being raised, and I think she made that quite clear today. I also believe that the Communities Department has been one of the more proactive committees in given the wide range of stuff that they have to provide for. And at some stage, I think and I know that individually we've raised it at the committee, but I think that at some stage we need to let them know the appreciation that we have in relation to the work that they have carried out to date.
No, thanks for that, Fra. I think you're absolutely right. And I know Robin wasn't talking them down in any way there at all, far from it. But yeah, no, you're right. And we have said it at many of our meetings during, right in the middle of the pandemic when we were meeting, just how grateful we are to all of the staff within all of those sectors within that department and the wonderful work that they have done. And I mean, we're as a committee, we're here to support the Minister. That's our role, is to support and to scrutinise and to give her our opinion. And that's what we want to continue to do. So, members, if there's nothing else, everybody finished? Nobody else have anything to say under AOB? No? Okay. I'll move on then to agenda item 21, which is date, time and location of the next meeting. Our next meeting at this stage is planned for next Wednesday, the 16th of September. Members, we may well be moving at some stage back to our proper committee day, which is a Thursday, but we'll certainly keep you, the team here will keep you updated if that should change in any way. All right, members, thank you very much for your time today. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
This is the Northern